It says we are live. Hi, everyone. Number one Marmaduke fan here. This is exciting because this is one of my absolute favorite indie comics of all time, Changeling, an urban fairy tale. And I'm joined by the creator and writer for Changeling, Brett McGowan. Say hi, Brett.
Hi, Brett.
I walked right into that one. I gave you the layup. All right. So, Brett, Changeling's your first. Changeling issue 1 was your very first comic project, right?
First one I actually finished to completion. I had a couple other story ideas, but they never really got off the ground.
And we've talked. I think I've interviewed you about Changeling issue 1. I think I've interviewed the whole team behind Mythoverse. So let me just maybe give people who aren't familiar with your project just a quick, like the 1-minute summary. The Mythoverse is a shared comic universe that you and other comic creators have written fantasy stories for. The first Mythoverse Kickstarter collected 3 of these stories, and your issue 1 of Changeling was one of the 3 main stories that kicked it off. People don't have to read the other stories to follow Maeve's story in Changeling, but it does kind of add some additional aspects to the magic of the world. But something I really appreciated about Changeling is we're following a young female protagonist who has a real problem, and you treat that problem very, very seriously. She has sort of like debilitating shyness, right? And I think Maeve's a very cute protagonist, but you don't treat her problem as cute. This is something she has to struggle with, and I think it makes her very human and very identifiable. So this being issue 1 being your first completed and published comic project, why I love Changeling issue 1 is I think you're hitting on what a lot of comic writers miss, which is the importance of the protagonist having a deep struggle. Is there anything you want to tell people maybe about like your writing process or like how you got started on issue 1?
Well, it was how I got started on issue 1 sort of came from like I was like before that I was sort of in a spot where I was not even sure if I was going to even try making comics anymore, because as I said, I had several other story ideas that I tried making into comics, but I could never just get them off the ground. And I was sort of at a spot where it was like, I was about to say, you know what, maybe I'm not meant to do this. Maybe I won't make comics, and you know what, that's okay. I'll learn to live with it, even if I'm not happy with it. And then when I started getting more active on comics Twitter about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided, you know what, maybe I'll just give it another shot. What have I got to lose at this point?
And Dan Sakharov had previously created Adobe Kroger, correct? And then kind of like through communication with you and others, it was sort of like you guys sort of naturally came together, and the idea came to maybe have your characters share a world together, right?
Oh yeah, like Dan, Matt, and I, like all 3 of us made our books separately independently from one another. Like there was initially no plan of having them cross over, at least being part of the same universe. Like it's just sort of, it was something that just kind of happened, and that's really the best way to say it. Like Mythoverse is the happiest accident I've ever had.
And maybe to highlight that, I think maybe the shared thread or substance I see it's in the name Mythoverse. There's this love and interest in old myth. So kind of returning to Maeve, she has this modern identifiable side to her where she's kind of like a teenage girl who's shy and struggles in social situations. I think a lot of people could identify with that. And then you also have this idea of the fairy not as cute little Disney pixies, but as something kind of like mysterious and dangerous. Maybe kind of like the title, an urban fairy tale, says something about that too. Why is myth important to you as a writer?
Well, I mean, I think it kind of Like anyone that knows me knows that, like, I got a lot of Irish in my family, and the Irish have a long history of being storytellers and being songwriters, being bards, being artists. It's artists and I guess I could jokingly say that my Celtic ancestors liked making art as much as they liked pillaging other people. I mean, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. The Celts would pick any reason to have fights. It's just how they were.
Wanted to ask you about the artist team. So on Pencils and Inks for issue 1, you had Victor Campen, and for color you had Ginger Foxy. I'd like to try sharing the screen. I think I know how to do this without screwing up too bad. But the same artistic team from issue 1 is going to be returning in issue 2. Could you tell us a little bit about your pencil inker and your colorist and what it's been like working with them?
Oh yeah, like Victor, I met through a mutual friend named Hoyer, and this was like during a time where I was sort of in between artists for Changeling, and I just kind of showed him. I just kind of got into communication with him. Paid him to draw a couple things, and I was really sold on Victor because he had a manga inspired style that I was after. Or like my manga and anime have always been sort of a huge part of my adolescence, and it's kind of fitting because Changeling is sort of a pastiche of all the things I liked when I was young.
I even like the East meets West dimension of it, right? Like I've started ever since reading Changeling, I've started noticing manga artists who sort of pay attention to the West or grab ideas and fantasy elements from Western and Anglo-Saxon and Celtic storytelling. So it is interesting to me that you're kind of hitting maybe like this sweet spot where this could work for manga readers, this could work for, kind of like C.S. Lewis or fairy tale fans or Tolkien fans. And something you've talked about in the Kickstarter for issue 2 is you've appreciated kind of like the growth of your artist team over time. And I'll go ahead, I think I can bring it up, but I'm of the opinion that kind of like in issue 2, it's sort of like they're finding their groove, and it's got like a maybe deeper, moodier, magical element to it.
Carl's actually absolutely correct that Victor's work has Mega Man vibes. That's what he told me. One of his main inspirations art is the art of Mega Man. So
I can see it. Yeah, kind of like clean work, like and a really strong emphasis on character expression and interaction. What else? And for Ginger, I like how Ginger is maybe almost capturing a bit of an otherworldly feel. Like it's not like the standard Western, like everything's a flat color style of coloring, and maybe just kind of like with their emphasis on mood lighting and everything, it gives it some of it like a little bit of a far away quality that I think is a good fit.
Ginger's an illustrator by trade, so I think she sort of brings those kind of sensibilities, and she loves cartoons too. Like she loves stuff like she loves stuff like My Little Pony, Transformers. Like I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was growing up in a post-Soviet country, so she got exposed to a lot of American media that managed to get its way through.
Nice. So we've talked about the artist team. I'd maybe like to touch on issue 1 itself, maybe for people who are new to Changeling. So if they want to catch up, like it's not that hard. They could visit the Mythoverse store and get the digital issue of issue 1 for a really affordable price. And there's also a tier to get a reprint of the first 3 issues from like all the Mythoverse creators, so they could get not just Maeve's story, but everything relevant to that if they get the print edition through the Kickstarter. Maybe for like kind of like keeping in mind like people who are brand new to Changeling and Maeve, what's your elevator pitch for like why you love this story and why you love this character? What makes it work?
Teenage girl finds out she's a banshee, and now and it throws her whole life out of whack.
Nice. And maybe like getting back to what I was talking about earlier about maybe like this, there's this human side and this fantasy side. She feels out of place, right? Like she's not quite sure if she belongs or if she fits in the human world. And as kind of like the name Changeling implies, that changelings in fairy tales would kidnap babies and replace them with little fairy babies. So there's this you have this like brilliant poetic connection, I think, between like the human problem, I don't fit in, I don't belong, and the magical issue of being a magical being who's been left in the human world, right? And then towards the end of issue 1, we meet Gavin, who at first appears to be a cat, but we learn that there's more to this cat than meets the eye, and he's actually kind of like a dangerous fellow from the magical world. So we leave off issue 1 basically kind of like understanding Maeve's problem, sort of this fear or this sense of being an outsider that's kind of like crippling her in social situations. And the buildup to this is we're going to finally get to see her in the magical world and maybe learn more about her origins. I'm just kind of like curious, maybe for you as a writer, how much are you planning ahead, and how much are you kind of like coming up, kind of creating her as you go along? Are you more like the OCD outline everything type, or a bit more of the Akira Toriyama, like I'll figure it out as I go type?
Point. Right. Tori. Like the process of it, having a destination is figuring out the way as I go. Like I get kind of more of a, if anyone remembers that one scene in Cars where it's with Mater and Lightning McQueen, and Mater's showing off like how he's so good at driving backwards, and at the end of it, Lightning asks him, "How did you do that?" And Mater just says, "I don't need to know where I'm going. I just need to know where I've been." So I'm just kind of obsessively paying attention to everything I've already written, just so it stays consistent.
Right. Like don't forget your own world building. Yeah. Maybe like one other interesting theme from issue 1 I want to highlight is you use religious ideas well as a way of building your story. So Maeve's raised in a Christian family, but she discovers she comes from this almost pagan fantasy world. And I think Gavin at one point says something like, well, we don't worship your God in our world, something to that effect. We're in the world of the fairy. Christianity is still sort of like a foreign thing to them still. And Maeve has some of this tension in herself, where she has this great line, I love God, but sometimes I'm afraid of him, right? So there's a lot of, I think, inner tension in the character. When I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of the great fantasy, I think of, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, they have their Christianity sort of as a substance or a foundation that they build on for a fantasy world. Could you talk a little bit about like how important is religion to Changeling, and how do you see it as how do you kind of like relate maybe the Christian side to the pagan side in your own mind?
It's kind of informed from my own experiences growing up in the church. My dad is a pastor. I've pretty much been in the church my entire life, and although there was a period of my life where I was actually legitimately struggling with my faith, I was actually kind of calling myself an agnostic for a while, just because I wasn't sure if I really believed anymore, or like I was kind of, I guess if I'd had a more gone full-blown atheist, yes, I guess it's kind of a credit to my dad that he kind of wasn't really. I think he sort of kind of knew that this was just something I had to work out for myself, and all he could really do was just support me and answer questions if I had them as best he could. So it's, and I think the real thing that became a catalyst for me kind of wanting to use my own faith to sort of inform the story. It came from this Wasp album called Unholy Terror, which Blackie Lawless was also kind of informed by his own experiences growing up in the church, and also the various kinds of stresses and neuroses that sort of drive young people out of the church.
Hmm.
And that's, but also sort of what also kind of can bring them back in, and that's kind of a journey I want to talk about, because I feel I don't want to say it's reacting, because I don't consider myself a reactionary, but something I really have a problem with when it comes to a lot of Christian fiction is just how much it's preaching to the choir. Like, it's talking to people who already believe, and even if it's talking about like matters of struggling with faith, like they almost never talk about, like, I don't feel like they talk about it in a way that most people my age really can relate to like
they want a 30-minute sitcom solution. They want everything wrapped up with a happy ending. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Like I guess that's a good way of putting it. Like I find I just find a lot of it very wanting when it comes to talking to young people.
What informs you as a storyteller? Like, I think we can always like picture like the really cheesy bad Christian art in our minds, kind of like the God's Not Dead, or like I don't know, like they'll call it Angel TV or something, right? So if that's what you're trying to avoid, what's maybe like a positive example of something you're striving for in how you tell your stories?
Like I said, I just kind of come back to, like, I just kind of come back to my own experiences, and I look at the stuff that I was inspired by when I was young. Like I said, a lot of pretty much what makes up except Changeling is a lot of what I was into when I was in high school. Like I was really into manga, anime. It was like stuff like Bleach, and which I was Fully Cooley was also kind of an inspiration too, since that one's also a bit of a coming of age story too. There's also was really into Runaways. That was a comic that really kind of reignited my passion for comics. That and Neil Gaiman's Sandman. So I just take the stuff I liked, and I kind of add my own experiences to it. And I think that sort of helps make it feel more authentic, because this is based off the life of someone who actually had these sorts of experiences. Although
there's a connection to your personal experience, but your creative process isn't purely just taking your experiences. It's also it's sort of like you're combining what you've lived with like what you've read and loved, right?
Yeah, I pretty much. I mean, like Very much. I mean, like I kind of I forget who said this, but I remember one guy on YouTube saying if you want to be a writer, then you got to be an interesting person. You got to have lived an interesting life, and I mean, my own life is not exactly that interesting. I'm just like let me put it this way: I didn't live Ernest Hemingway's life. I'm just some guy out in Tacoma, who, when he's not making comics, he works out of a warehouse. That's not interesting.
And I mean, the advice, you've got to live an interesting life. I feel like that's one of those pieces of advice that has a grain of truth to it, but it's not entirely true, because there have been lots of very interesting artists who have lived charmed lives, you know, just like being rich and successful and everybody loving their art, right? So you can't take something like that as a universal rule. I think part of it, no one's gone to a fairy world, right? We have to. Maybe not, but what you have to do is use your imagination to kind of like enter into that kind of space, regardless of what your experiences are.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, I just sort of, like I said, I think when you get right down to it, every writer ultimately draws from their own experience and to one degree or another. But I think really what it comes down to is like it's a difference between being inspired and just being derivative. I mean, like Tolkien's stuff. That's a pastiche of his own life experiences, plus his love of old myths too. So
yeah,
I mean, like I don't know how many people know this, but Children of Húrin, it's basically it's very, if you've read Beowulf, you'll spot the similarities like almost instantly.
Yeah. I thought of Changeling the other day when I read a Lewis quote. He's writing the introduction to That Hideous Strength, and he says, "I've written this as a modern fairy tale." And so then he tries to answer the question, well, why do the first few chapters of That Hideous Strength seemingly focus on like boring material? Like the first few chapters are about college professors debating the sale of land. And his point is that in old fairy tales, things like castles and wicked stepmothers would be considered part of normal life for those people. And it's only when we get to the modern age that things like the castles and the stepmothers feel far away and remote from us too. So his point is that if you lived in like medieval times, most fairy tales would start with seemingly very humdrum, very down-to-earth, normal things. And then the goblins and the witches and the elves and fairies enter into the picture and make everything go crazy, right? And your urban fairy tale somewhat follows this pattern where very down-to-earth, you know, normal teenage girl problem, the magical world enters into her life. And, you know, kind of like as you described, I have this regular life, right? Like maybe like my corrective or my challenge to the idea that you must live an interesting life to be creative is I don't think you have to have like crazy things happen to you in your life to be an interesting person, right? You can have a regular life, but the imagination is almost it's like it's pushing you it's pushing you into the world of myth or pushing you into this world of creativity.
I think what it comes down to is that people who are creative, they just have an innate need to do it. Like it's kind of like how my cat has to constantly scratch the carpet. He doesn't know why he has to do it. He just knows he has to. Like he's not, even though I wish he wouldn't.
Next, I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of the bonus art and some like the exclusives for the Kickstarter. So I'm going to switch over to Kickstarter. I think I can do this. Yes, I'm not a boomer anymore. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is the Kickstarter for Changeling and Urban Fairy Tale issue 2. It's linked in the description. So in addition to your kind of like your regular staff who do the book, there is also some special bonus art. Let's see if I can. There we go. I have to go to the. I'm on the wrong tab. All right. So, in addition to the regular book, there's going to be an opportunity to get a variant cover by Dylan Fagan, who I actually saw in the chat. So, you said you describe him as your own homegrown artist. Tell us a little bit about like how'd you find Dylan Fagan? How did he start working for you, doing illustrations for your work?
I think Dylan and I met back when he was still on Twitter. I'm trying to remember. I think he was one of the early people to donate to our first Kickstarter. He'll have to correct me on this because I don't remember all the details. I remember talking with him on Discord. We brought him in, and he started doing fan art for us. And then I think somewhere along the line, he said, "Hey, I want to do a book for you guys." And it's just that's pretty much it. Like he started making comics for us. Like he did a couple Changeling stories when he wrote and drew. When he just wrote, he also drew a one shot for Adobe Kroger that Dan wrote. He drew a short Mythics comic that Matt wrote that appeared in an anthology collection called Corona Kings. Like honestly, the amount of work he's done for us is just, it's staggering. Like it's kind of why I put down that he's sort of our homegrown superstar artist. He's just done so much. He's worked so hard. Like he has nearly worked himself to exhaustion doing stuff for us. We've actually had to tell him to dial it back, take a break.
Dylan's actually in the chat. He says, "Yep, it was on Twitter."
Yes.
He says, "Yep, it was on Twitter. I only asked about Maeve." Lol. I mean, if you find a good artist, put him to work. You're right.
Not a good artist.
He wrote an Adobe story.
He's not just
art by Rosslyn.
Good artist. Yeah, he did that. Yes, I almost forgot that. Yeah, he did that too. And he's he's not just a good artist. He's also he's constantly he's hardworking. Like he's always working to do better than he did on his last comic. Like he's constantly trying to improve. He never settles.
Speaking for myself, I'm kind of a variant nut for indie comics. Like I love getting the variant covers. So one nice thing you've done in the campaign is you have pledges or reward tiers where people can get both the regular cover and Dylan Fagan's Akira homage variant cover. So they could get them separately, or there are several tiers where they could get them together if they want to go in for a little bit more. Has the regular cover art been revealed yet, or is that still behind the scenes?
Oh yeah. It's used for the campaign's thumbnail actually.
And is the main cover by Victor and Ginger Foxy, or do you have another artist for that? Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of an unofficial policy we have, that it's what you see is what you get. Like the cover matches the interior. Unlike certain other comic publishers that the bait and switches on you with a really awesome cover and so interiors. I'm not naming any names.
I feel that pain just as you described it. Yeah. And then the second is a exclusive poster by Amanomicon.
Yeah, Amanomicon.
Now I'm guessing you also kind of encountered this artist through Twitter or just through online, and that gradually developed into a working relationship.
Kind of. I know her through through a mutual friend and one of our other writers, LeBlanc. And LeBlanc, he brought her on to just, she contributes she contributes illustrations. She's contributed some logo design. She has this really dark, moody goth style that just fit the atmosphere of the book so well.
And I believe, have I seen that you actually did manage to turn Maeve's hoodie into a product? Is that right?
If you're talking about the time that we were sending out hoodies with a campaign, yes and no. We did. But they had to be done by hand by Dan's wife, and they were only for that first campaign. And at this point in time, we're sort of not. I don't think we have any plans to revisit making them, just because the design is so unique. There's no way for us to mass produce them, so they had to be done by hand, and it's a very time consuming process, even though Dan's wife loves doing them.
Gotcha. So the one of the things about these Kickstarters is you never know, like what's going to be like a special one time thing, right? So it's always good to follow them and get on them while you can.
Yeah, right now that's going to be Dylan's variant cover and Omen's poster. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe I might. I don't know. Did I? Actually, yeah, I did think Omen's poster and Dylan's cover are going to be exclusives for this campaign. These are going to be the only time you'll ever be able to get these, and so yeah, because we're never going to print these again after this campaign. So you miss out on them. Sorry.
What I like about that is yours is actually one of the Mythoverse generally is one of the best for having an affordable entry point. I think a lot of other indie comic creators, they struggle with like, they have like $25 be the entry point just to like get the story at all. And you guys go all the way down to like $3 to get the digital comics, which is competitive with mainstream comics and is trouncing kind of like the price point for lots of other indie projects. I do kind of like that you have maybe like the exclusive collectible element for the variant covers and some of the higher tier things, but you also have like really easy options for people to get in as well, who maybe like not be like rolling in the bucks these days, right? Anything you've learned after doing issue 1 and the other side projects? Anything you've learned business wise about pricing these things and managing these projects that you think people would like hearing, maybe if they're thinking about doing their own comic projects?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, I mean, like, just have a digital option. Just because I guarantee the average indie creator is not going to be able to ship internationally because of import fees and shipping costs overseas. And not only that, you can never. Like, a friend of mine named Tank. He lives out in South Africa. He's told us how unreliable the South African post office can be with getting packages. And so not only that, digital eats into a lot of overhead you're going to encounter. Or just and if you price it low enough, I guarantee piracy is not going to be an issue for you, which is like that. I could go on a rant about that, but that's irrelevant to this discussion.
I gotcha. So relevant to working on issue 2. So I believe you guys got issue 2 funded or paid for based on like the success of your previous campaigns, right? So it's paid for. Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yes. All the art for issue 2 has been paid for out of the gate.
That's nice, because I've heard horror stories about people who they do one of these campaigns, they don't know what they're doing on the business side, they run out of money, right, and it drags on for years and years. So you did some preparation, right, to get ready for issue 2. You sort of treated funding issue 1 as a way of building, your ongoing comics business.
Well,
And
yeah,
it's
for
go ahead.
for us, crowdfunding's really more. It's really more market research than a way to get money. Our merch store is where we're trying to get the cash flow in, and the crowdfunding is how we test ideas and bring in new fans.
So for issue 2, I believe I read that you're 3 pages away from having the art completely done, and you need to do the lettering for it. Do you do the lettering normally, or do you have an artist or a designer do that?
Actually, what I said in there was Victor had only 3 more pages left to draw out. Ginger is close to having half the book colored. As for lettering, Dan is going to be handling that. He's been taking up lettering since Adobe Croaker 2, and he's also been lettering a couple other comics. One he's lettering right now is his racing manga that's also set within the Mythoverse, Triple Crown. People will probably be taken aback by Triple Crown because it actually features no fantasy elements in it, even though it's set within the Mythoverse. Oh yeah, it's just a straight up slice of life racing manga.
Nice. Well, it's always good to try something different. Stretch your horizons a little bit.
And Dan's really into F1 racing, and he said, and I think on Twitter he said, I would really like to write a racing manga, and I told him, yeah, I'd probably read that. I don't know where the idea of he came for him to set it within the Mythoverse, but I'm kind of glad he did, just because that's gonna make it stand out. Now, like I said, it's set within the same universe. It doesn't feature any fantasy elements.
I get it, yeah, because there is like that normal down to earth side of things as well.
Yeah, but at most, the protagonist Skip Sparks is just going to be a celebrity within the larger Mythoverse.
Nice. Maybe they'll show up on hoodies, or you should do some more Easter eggs, right? Of like secret things, like on the posters in the background.
She'll show up in like maybe billboards, or maybe on TV or something. Maybe on some,
The last thing I wanted to mention about the campaign page is you have some preview art for a bonus preview that's going to be included in Changeling issue 2. This isn't your project, but it's set within the Mythoverse. Is there briefly anything you can tell us about Ash and Hertz, maybe like working behind the scenes with the creators of it?
Okay, so yeah, Ash and Hertz it's its own separate book. We're going to be including a 5-page preview of it along with the others. It's by a brand new creative team that the leader is Aurora Valentine. Mythoverse fans will probably remember her from Hallowed Harvest. She wrote Piper Life's Final Riddle for it. And the artist is a friend of mine named Manuela. It's kind of Cinderella inspired. And it's also got the distinction of being one of our first period pieces.
Nice. I also appreciate kind of like the business sense of saying, if you like Changeling, here are other things within Mythoverse that you might also like. Like I can tell there's a very good back and forth between the creators who are contributing to the Mythoverse universe. So, we don't know too much about the story yet, but I respect the kind of like the business sense of it, where as we're reading about Changeling, we're maybe getting to get introduced to another story people might like as well.
We attached it because they funding was a bit of an issue for them, and I really wanted to help them out a little bit. So, and so I talked over with Matt and Dan and just thought thought about like attaching it to a future campaign, and Changeling was the one it made the most sense to. It's they have the most in common. They're both aimed at a younger audience. Yes, Ashenhearts is a lot more shoujo inspired than Changeling is, but it's also inspired by old fairy tales. It's also a coming of age story, and I honestly think like if you did like Changeling, I think Ashenhearts might also be something you'll like too. And like I said, this one's going to be set within the 1600s during the 30 Years' War. We're out in France, and so it's gonna give you something that you're already familiar with, but also something different.
Neat. I'm kind of interested in maybe in giving you a bit more of a chance to talk about. I've asked you a little bit about your writing process. I've asked you a little bit about things that inspire you, things that work for you. Maybe like what have you learned working with Maeve? Do you feel like maybe you're starting to find your groove as a creator now that you've got one under your belt?
Yeah. I mean, the thing, it's interesting for me because I don't really feel like I'm in control of Maeve's story. Like I feel for me, writing Changeling it's less like I'm crafting the story and more just telling what actually happened. Like Maeve feels like her own person. She feels like she has her own life she's living, and all I'm doing is just telling people about it.
She's coming alive for you. Yeah.
Pretty
neat.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how will this campaign affect the future for Maeve and your creation, right? So I'm under the impression that you use the funding, you said kind of like as a way of doing market research, but it also helps you fund future books, right? So if people want to see an issue 3 at some point, supporting issue 2 is one of the best ways to guarantee an issue 3. Is there anything you want people to know maybe about like how the crowdfunding is helping you be creative? Maybe anything you've learned about, like the business side of thing. Like creative people, we just want to get to creating, but then we find that money has like an impact on what we can do. How is that going for you, and what are you learning about that side of things?
Well, just kind of, just sort of best advice I can give is know your limits and try to work your best with them. Like for me, because even though my job pays me pretty well, I can only commission so many pages in a month. So it comes back to this one thing that Dan likes champion, that comic creators, we have to be our own advocates.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be your own hype machine. Like you have to be the person who believes the most in what you're doing. Mostly because like if you don't believe in it, why should anybody else? So
yeah, like
you have to constantly be hyping this thing up. You constantly have to be keeping people up to date on what's going on. That's why I've been pretty good. I've made it a point to regularly update about pages that Ginger would get finished, even if they were just work in progress. Is just showing people that work was getting done was a good way of assuring them, hey, we're still marching on, we're still going, we intend to get this done, and
we're still alive.
As long as you're maintaining a good positive interaction with your community and your fans, you'll find that they're often very patient and willing to wait a little while if they have to, and also helps to maintain good optics on your social media. As far as like the money goes, all I can really say is just know your budget and just try and just say like, okay, like how many can I get done? How many can I get commissioned this month? And also kind of know your artist limits, because I mean, like Victor loves working on this, but he has a day job too, so he can only get so much done in a day.
Yeah.
So but but it helps that he regularly keeps me in the loop when he's working, and that's also a good thing. Like stay in regular contact with your art team if you have one. Like you got like all artists are different. Like you're not always like Victor and Ginger are now too, since we began to work.
I think that last couple of sentences cut out a bit.
Where did I cut out?
I think you said all artists are different, and then I heard like a hum and a couple words.
All right. Okay. All right. So, yeah, every artist is going to be different. Me, Victor, and Ginger, like we're all good friends since we started working on this. You're not going to have that sort of relationship with every artist you work with. You're going to have ones that want to keep it more professional, and that's fine. Really, about the most important thing is that you keep some level of regular contact. Doesn't have to be every day. Can just be a weekly thing. Just what's important is that there is a line of communication, just so if something happens, you can plan for it. You can keep your backers and your fans in the loop. It's just you really got to get good at communication. You really got to get good at. You have to have some level of salesmanship if you're going to be doing this.
I think that's something a lot of artists miss. I think a lot of artists think if you build it, they will come. Like I'll just draw the pictures and I'll magically have.
Yeah, Field of Dreams is a movie, people.
But you essentially have to learn to be your own independent businessman, right? And I've always believed that. So it's kind of interesting hearing you describe it. That's what you're having to live now as the writer. You can't just be the writer. You're the creator and the hype man and the project manager and the social media guy.
That's honestly what comics is, like 90% of. It's like 10% actual creating and 90% project management.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be honest. If you want to be successful at this, you are going to have to learn to get good at a lot of unsexy stuff.
Yeah.
You are going to have to learn to get good at things like budgeting, accounting, marketing. You are going to have to learn those things. Like a lot of the background stuff that's needed to make it successful. So sorry, most of us can't. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Most of us can't afford to hire an ad agency to do it for us.
I think a salesman once said, "I made the thing. Now I have to go out and sell the bleeping thing."
Probably. I would love to know who said that.
I mean, it could be a bit fun in its own right. Maybe it depends on like how shy you are, right? Like if you're really enthusiastic about your work, you just can't wait to be the hype man, and people who just kind of want to like stay in the background at the party and not talk about what they're working on. They're just hoping it'll come to them, right? Like if you can practice at it, like it's not this. I think you're right. It's not the sexiest part of the job, but it doesn't. It can also be a fun aspect of the job. Like people go to comic conventions to do exactly this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like I said, I mean, like you don't have to be the world's greatest salesman. You just have to have some level of expertise with it.
Okay, I've got a bit more of a specific question. So when you're working with your writer, like people say there's the Stan Lee method where he kind of leaves things up in the air a bit for his artists. Some writers I know are very specific and very detailed in what they want for. So I'm looking at this page, and Maeve just kind of has like this very subtle, like nice body language to her. How much of that is you telling your artist, I want something that feels like this, or I want her posed exactly like this? And how much of this is your artist getting to interpret your script a bit for himself?
Well, Victor has a really good sense of storytelling that I really don't have to direct him that much. I can write a script that's pretty sparse on details, and I don't have to worry about it because I know he'll nail it. Nail it anyway. He is on it. Like that's, in fact, that's how I know how. It's kind of why I like to say he and Ginger are like the only art team I would ever want to work with on this book, and it's like it. Like here's the thing: like you can just look at that page. There's no text. There's no words, but you can still tell what's happening.
Personality and visual communication. Yeah, this is something like I'll harp on all day. Is the art part of comics is part of what makes the medium work. You should theoretically be able to read it with an illiterate kid, and they should be able to follow the gist of what's going on through the visual aspect of communications. Ooh, yeah. Hey, the Bundard, Tim Lim, the Bundardrome is here. Tip, pretend you're selling someone else's book that you happen to like. We don't have a hard time telling folks about how good Jurassic Park or Back to the Future is. So use that honest enthusiasm. Nice.
Pretty much. Yeah, he nailed it. Yeah. But yeah, like this, but yeah, like this is just how Victor is really good. Is just really good with visual storytelling. Like his character work is very expressive. Like you can just tell you can immediately tell what they're thinking just by looking at their faces. He can direct them. He's really good with the body language. He's just like, I could probably write an entire book that used no text and you could still follow what was happening. But I mean, like the text is only there to supplement the images, not the other way around. That's my philosophy.
Anything else you've anything else about your artist you want to share?
I don't know, man. I feel like their work pretty much speaks for itself, and honestly, they would do a better job talking about themselves than I would. It's that one thing I definitely feel really proud of is just how much they stepped up their game for issue 2. Like there is a noticeable night and day difference in quality. Like the art just looks better than it did in issue 1.
Something else I wanted to touch on. So, you've talked about kind of like learning these new experiences. I've seen a lot of creators talk about like the experience of getting their first piece of fan art. And that's like a magical moment for them where it's like, oh yeah, someone liked my work enough to do their own fan drawing of it. And you've talked about, communicating with your fans and, being available to them and interacting with them. Could you talk a little bit about kind of like the experience of, seeing your fans' interpretations of your characters, looking at fan art, maybe like for people who are brand new to Changeling, like, do I have to get your permission before I draw your OC? Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's a good feeling to see other people try to draw your characters. It really is, because it's like, someone likes what I do enough to try and this is how they're showing their appreciation. I love getting the fan art that feels really good. That it's one of those things that it's hard to put into words. You really don't understand it until you actually experience it for yourself.
You're reaching people, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of interested me is for the preview video for Changeling, I think people have to think seriously about the video because that's sometimes like the first and only impression a lot of people might get of a project. So you show some of the art, you kind of like do some text to set up the story, and you have a voice actress, which I always think is a good idea, because I think kids especially, like if you hand them a comic and say read this, it's like, well, it's a book, I don't want to read, I want to watch the TV or the iPhone. I'm such a boomer. But how'd you find like a voice actress for Maeve, and are you thinking about things like that for the future, like voice acting, that kind of dimension of it?
Oh yeah. That was done by a friend of mine named Kylie Lee, whom I met through Twitter. I had her do a couple of line readings for Maeve, and she just fell in love with the character. She's told me that playing Maeve isn't even acting for her; they're practically the same person.
Huh. Very serendipitous. I love how it's either like I went to a professional, or I just found someone who is perfect for the role. Mm-hmm. I think Walt Disney once had the story that he used to not look at any of the child actors who would audition for roles, because he purely wanted to hear their voice and not let their physical appearance color his judgment of their performance at all. Right? Like, I love it when you find someone whose voice just fits, and it's like you snap your fingers, everything clicks into place.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I've covered everything that I had notes on related to this project. Is there anything anything else you'd like to share about Changeling and Urban Fairy Tale? Any topics that it was anything we missed that you wanted to touch on?
Off the top of my head, yeah, just support this, just because I think people are really gonna like this, like the story, like it's moving Maeve's story forward, and not only that, we're going to be seeing the larger world of Avalon, which is the Fey realm. I think a lot of people are going to like that. Ginger contributed a lot of concepts for this issue. Victor's been doing his best to sort of interpret them his way. And we're going to be meeting new characters. You actually probably saw some of them in one of the pages that's on on this Kickstarter page, actually.
Going into the tavern, right? You can't have a fantasy story without a cool tavern scene. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yep, we're gonna meet some new characters. Gonna get a look at the larger world. We're gonna get and we're even gonna start learning a little bit more about where Maeve came from and who her Fey parent is, and see if that gets her answers, or just ends up leaving her with more questions.
Excellent. Do you have an idea of how many issues will cover a story arc yet, or is that still something you're working on in your own kind of writing process?
At the moment, I've kind of got 7 issues planned for Volume 1. When I sort of overall, I suppose the best way I can put it is that Changeling's story is going to be told in as many issues as it takes to tell it.
Gotcha. And you do. I'm looking at issue 1. It's about 38 pages, right? So I think if the standard Western comic is 24 pages, I think I've read somewhere that the standard manga chapter is about 30 pages. So maybe one nice thing is you're doing, when you say like 6 issues, it seems like you write maybe a bit of a meatier issue where with that, and with that extra page content, you're not like stretching it out super thin. You're hitting on a lot of stuff. So pacing wise, I think people get a good chunk in one issue.
Oh yeah, like this is something that irks me about how most comics are written these days. Like, I've currently been reading the new IDW Transformers Beast Wars comic, and I like it. But what bugs me about it is that I can tell it is written for trades.
Oh, we got a question from Neo Star Productions. Will Maeve meet Oberon and Titania in the future. Okay, that's a reference to fairy myth. Yeah, Titania from.
Actually, actually, as I recall, they're more of a Shakespeare invention.
That's what I was thinking. Midsummer Night's Dream. I might have said Arthur by accident. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, they're as far all the research I've done is that they originated in a Midsummer Night's Dream. Like they're purely an invention of Shakespeare. Really good though. To answer Neostar's question, maybe.
That's it. Nice and committal. Yeah.
It could happen.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you have different eras you could work from for inspiration. Like Shakespeare has a take on fairies, like ancient, pre-Christian myths might have a different take on fairies. So you've got lots of different sources or styles to draw from for inspiration. So good idea keeping it open.
Yeah, I'm sort of more drawn to that. More drawn to that sort of old depiction of Fae, where they're just as likely to help you as they are to harm you.
Yeah.
And they're capricious. It's just an alien.
Fantastic. All right. So I want to scroll back up to the top of this campaign so I can just give people a bit of an update. All right. So you're shooting for 2,600. You're at 1,700. So good chunk over halfway there. Yep. You have 68 backers and 22 days to go. And you got the Kickstarter Project We Love feature. Is that something that Kickstarter just picks all by themselves? Do you have to do you have to bug Kickstarter and ask them to review it?
I literally did not even know I had it until you pointed that out.
Congratulations, then. Well, you deserved it.
Now I've got to have to make that part of the marketing campaign.
It's interesting. Basically, what they do when they give you that is like one of the managers at Kickstarter reviews your project, and hopefully it means that they kind of refer it or recommend it to more people. I mean, one thing I appreciate is you've got a campaign under your belt already. You fulfilled it successfully. You fulfilled it in a timely manner. I got lots of communication from you about how things were going, right? So kind of like in a sea of, indie comic projects where some of them have, disasters or really late fulfillment schedules that are plaguing them. Just the fact that you were professional enough to do the business side of it right the first time, I think that deserves some appreciation and some consideration for people who want to buy some indie comics.
Yeah, I think. Oh, here's another thing I would recommend people who, if you're going to be crowdfunding, ship out a digital copy to all your backers, regardless of what tier they back, just in case things get held up in printing, and so that they have something to hold them over.
Yeah. It's also good for the reviewer and like for guys like me, right? Like it gives us something we can start reading and putting out reviews of, putting out the memes of. Yeah. I really appreciate that aspect. I've been a really hard in indie comics. I've noticed there is kind of an anti-digital vibe where some people feel like, well, if I'm doing the digital, I'm not getting the physical comic, or the physical comic isn't as special. And I like the physical comic. I like collecting it. I like putting it on my bookshelf and pulling it out and showing it to people. So I don't want to lose that aspect of it. But I've never liked the idea that you have to not do digital if you do the traditional publishing route. So I actually kind of respect that you just have this very straightforward, let's give our backers a digital book, right? You're embracing the good side of the technological age without losing kind of the cool, collectible traditional side of comics.
Well, I mean that I think that market's always going to be with us, but I'm not going to comment on why other creators just sort of resist digital. That's their business. It's not my place to speculate. But like I said, it's sort of like our policy with digital just sort of came out of necessity for us, just because we knew we were going to get backers that were international, and we couldn't, and just shipping internationally was not within reach for us. So digital just helps us get around that problem easily. And it also gives an affordable option to hopefully pretty much anyone in the world, well, as long as they have money, because of exchange rates. Like, I have to imagine, like even $1 isn't a lot of money in other currencies. See,
I've also I just pulled up the Mythoverse Comics, mythoversecomics.com. So that's the main website for the overarching thing. And I'll just plug this. So there's a merch store where if you really like Changeling or one of the other comics, there's some cool stuff related to that. Is there any maybe like Changeling gear that we could expect in the future?
Yeah, we'll keep making it as long as we have material to draw from. Like the latest mug we put up was where Maeve's like hiding in her hoodie. That was just based off a joke meme Dylan made off a Gravity Falls meme.
Nice.
I just found people probably can spot it. People probably can spot which one I'm talking about.
And I just found the digital download for issue 1 for 99 cents. So if you missed issue 1, well, you missed some of the cool little bonus stuff, but you can catch up for 99 cents. What a deal. And get ready for issue 2. So people basically have no excuse to not catch up on Changeling.
Not only that, we also stuff the digital copies with content that we don't include in the print.
Nice.
And it's a nice little incentive, and also it sort of helps us keep the prices low even on the print side.
All right. Well, I really appreciate like all the thought and consideration put into like every aspect of this.
Yeah. Like I said, we're all about providing our fans and customers as much value for their dollar as we can.
Excellent. Well, are there any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, if you back the Kickstarter if you can. If not, tell people about it. And I would also say, if you've got your own idea for a comic or a story you want to tell, I would say and you're wondering, is there even an audience out there for me? I would say just see it through, man. That way, even when you get it done, you'll have that accomplishment. Nobody's going to be able to take that from you. And as far as the audience goes, like, get ready. You're going to have to do a lot of stuff that is not very sexy. But it's going to be necessary for you to get some level of proficiency with those skills. But if you're willing to just see it through and not quit, it's going to be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to issue 2. I just want to say here in public what I've told Brett in private. This is one of my all-time favorite indie comic projects. I really appreciate the thought and love put into it, and I just highly encourage people to check it out. The Kickstarter is linked in the description of this live stream. When we end, I will update it to include links to Brett's social media if you want to tweet some fan art at him or something to make his day. And I will link to the Mythoverse Comics store for those who, if I've sold you on this and issue 2, I'll link you to that so you can easily get the digital copy of issue 1 and get caught up. So, Brett, I want to thank you for joining me as a guest today, and I really look forward to seeing what happens with Maeve's story in the future.
Yep, I think people are going to like it.
Awesome. And thanks to everyone who joined us in the chat. So with that, number one Marmaduke fan, love you guys, and we will catch you later.